Good afternoon to all our wonderful viewers. I'm Colin.
I'm Griffin.
And today we're going to be discussing a little bit about the relationship between different countries, some teamwork, and sharing our prosperity through nations.
Today we're going to be talking about the relations between some countries, primarily between our home country Canada and our neighbor the United States.
Yep.
But before we get into all that, as most Canadians know and some in the US know, there was an incident in Ottawa recently, which is Canada's capital. There was a ceremonial guard who was shot and killed, and the same man with the gun ran into the Parliament buildings and started shooting.
Yeah, an ISIS soldier shot him.
Yes, and this is while caucus was in session, so there was basically the leaders of our nation in the building at the time.
Yeah, they figure the assassin was about 10 feet away from reaching Stephen Harper and all the other officials in the room at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't know if you heard, but recently there's been a lot of talk about how ISIS has taken in younger, like almost kids, teenagers, recently, but not just from their home country, but from the USA, Britain, and Canada.
Yeah, and
there's been those joining. So
in Canada, we don't get terrorist attacks here.
No,
this is something new.
No, we haven't had an attack like this in probably a decade.
Yeah.
I can't think of one. I mean, the last big thing that hit all of us was 9/11.
Yeah,
but obviously that was in the USA.
It was an American thing, but it did affect us all. Because during 9/11, Canada instituted, I think it was Operation Yellow Ribbon, I think it was called, where Canada landed several American flights in Canadian airports.
Yes.
And they, in Canadian communities, housed those American citizens for the days after and stuff like that. Our friend Ryan was telling me about pictures from the Toronto airport at the time.
Yes.
And the entire runway was just parked full of planes.
Yep. Give him a shout out.
Shout out to Ryan.
Which Ryan?
Ryan Marno.
Thank you. Yeah, have a couple Ryan M's that we know. But yeah, Sergeant of Arms ultimately shot the assassin.
Yeah,
dealt with that.
The Sergeant of Arms is the person in the House of Commons who
is allowed to carry a weapon.
Yeah,
he's the only one.
He carries a weapon. He's also the man who brings in, for those of you who don't understand Canadian Parliament, he brings in a ceremonial mace to start the House of Commons session.
Yes, yeah, he's very important. I guess you could compare him to the Speaker, couldn't you?
Yeah, just as, or maybe even more important than the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, it's basically like that. So for those of you listening in the States, that's basically our equivalent to your Speaker.
Mm-hmm. But in the wake of all this, despite our differences between Canada and the US, there's been a lot of support from Americans.
Yes.
Including this one video on a site that I occasionally look at called The Loop Insight.
Yes.
From a Canadian reviewer out, I think, in the Maritimes. Anyway, it's a video at an American hockey game between two teams. I forget which teams they are. I think one of them was the Flyers.
Yeah.
And someone there had the idea to honor Canada and give respect. So yeah, this is quite amazing that they even gave the gesture. But pay attention to how the crowd reacts.
Yeah, it's great.
Our thoughts and prayers with our friends in Ottawa and across Canada. Please join us in the city of Old Canada. From
obviously a very moving video.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how enthusiastic the crowd was and respectful and
Yeah.
remembering their friends up to the north.
Yeah, and that's great to see. And it ties into our other point, but before that, I wanted to tell a story about yesterday in band class with the grade 8 band
Yes.
playing O Canada, because it's obviously beginning band.
Yeah,
And
it's a very simple arrangement of the anthem.
yeah.
The senior choir also does a 4-part harmony version of Old
Yeah,
Canada
which
as
is
well.
obviously a little more advanced, but what I'm getting at with the band 8 yesterday is maybe some of them can't really grasp how monumental this was.
The gravity of the situation.
Yeah, and I think some can, but at the end of the day, the anthem is more than just notes written on a sheet of paper.
Yeah,
It's something to be proud of. It's something to be patriotic about.
It's part of our identity as Canadians.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but personally, when I was playing that yesterday, not only was it the best that I've ever played it, but it meant the most to me.
Yeah, it's the same for me as well.
And just, yeah, it's huge. But tying into what we were talking about a little earlier, the relationship between countries.
Yes. Obviously, we mentioned Canada and the U.S., and we'll talk about that mostly. How we have our differences, but these two countries are really intertwined, incredibly. Even just basic things like the U.S. is Canada's #1 tourist destination.
Yes.
Obviously, lots of places there: Vegas, California, New York, a whole bunch of things. And other things like Canada is the U.S.'s largest oil supplier.
Yes.
As well as a lot of, I think, British Columbian water is also shipped down to California and places like Vegas. Well,
Yeah.
Vegas isn't in California, but...
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But yeah, we have economic, political differences, obviously, but we are now tied together once again by a war with ISIS.
Yes.
Obviously, Barack Obama was one of the first to address this. Stephen Harper made his address, I believe, yesterday
Yeah.
after the incident. And like we mentioned earlier, it's just, or did we mention it? But there's a lot of younger kids, and they are kids, they're teenagers, 18-year-old, something like that, and they're joining ISIS, but not just from the Islamic country, from Canada, from Britain, from the US.
All over the world.
Yeah, because they believe in the extremist group or they just want to be a part of it, but obviously the group is swaying them in that direction.
It's difficult to say what to do about the situation, really.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Canada and the U.S., continuing with the country relations, have had different approaches to issues like this in the past.
Yes.
Like, it was the Iraq War. George Bush asked for Canada's support, and his Prime Minister Jean Chrétien at the time said no.
Yeah.
He wanted proof that there was weapons of mass destruction and all that too. So.
And I personally think that was a good call, but we discussed yesterday in history that Canada used to be a peacekeeping nation, and that all hit the fan, and we're not a peacekeeping nation anymore ever since, what was it, Afghanistan. As soon as we hit the soil there's just, no, you can't keep peace anymore.
Peacemaking, not peacekeeping.
Yeah, and there's a difference. Yeah. And the USA, it seems, from Canada's perspective, it's always been easy to say that the USA has used brute force to usually divide and conquer or get what they want.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. I mean, look at places like Russia, too. I mean, they don't get as much media attention, but they're just as physical.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff with Russia that we won't get into either.
Yeah.
And again, none of these political relations between countries or how they deal with world issues reflects on the people and the culture at all.
No. No, when we discuss this, I think we're mostly discussing government. How the government's run and how it affects the people in the country, but not as much.
Like that recording of Singing O Canada at the hockey game, that's not a political thing, that's a cultural thing, Americans showing support for
Yeah, no,
Canadians.
that's morals, and that's great to see. I mean, when 9/11 occurred, we were there for America as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just it's a big deal. It tugs at the heartstrings, but I mean, when a country is attacked or threatened, you need to stand up for them. You need to be there to support them. When a country's attacked, you can't just rely on your own people to solve the problem. You need help.
Yeah.
And sometimes countries are afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Whether it's a pride thing or...
Yeah. It appears awfully social on the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, and sometimes, like, not using USA as an example, but just some of the bigger countries, it's almost like they think they're too good for help. Until they're vulnerable and you really do need that help.
And that comes into play with economics as well. I mean, you just look at some of the situations like Greece and the economic trouble there. And, you know, things with like the European Union and stuff. One country goes down, it starts dragging others down.
Yes.
Like Germany is a very prosperous and wealthy country. And
especially technologically.
Yeah, and they would start suffering if they keep having to support all these other countries and keep them up to keep the union up.
Yeah, because eventually rationing runs out. Resources run out. I mean, if you're losing colonies, or not really colonies anymore, but if you're losing, like you were saying, smaller countries or smaller cities that are, say, you're losing your biggest oil supplier, I mean, where are you going to get the oil from?
Yeah, like...
Then you need to start trading, you need to start asking for help.
Yeah, bring it back to Canada and the US. If, just say, one of either Canada or the US just disappeared, the other one would suffer greatly.
Yes.
Both sides.
For sure. And not just because of a military.
No, because resources and culturally as well.
Yeah.
I think it's over $1 billion transacted between Canada and the US every day.
Every day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. And obviously both of our countries have money. I mean, that's part of being prosperous, but I
think that $1 billion is actually just between Detroit and Windsor at the Ambassador Bridge trading.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like Ontario?
Yeah.
Windsor. Yeah, okay. But yeah, like even in World War One, when the USA didn't technically get physical, they provided the funds for the Allies. I mean,
they did, yeah.
I mean, imagine, especially back then, providing all that money to 4 or 5 countries.
Yeah.
Never, and still have enough to provide for your own country. I mean, it's amazing. Like, where'd the money come from? It makes you wonder, but...
Yeah.
And our opinions don't reflect how Canada feels, obviously.
No.
It's a personal opinion, and we're going to be biased because that's human nature, but there's certain ways to go about handling wars, handling extremist groups like ISIS, and everybody has their own take on it, because that's just how we are, but...
Yeah, it's a tough thing, and it is a matter of preference.
But I mean, if you have a Canadian soldier, or just maybe some Canadian citizen go join ISIS, I mean, they were born and raised in Canada. I mean, it's not easy to just throw them away like it was nothing.
It's tough to understand as well.
Yeah. Like how do you react to that? It's just...
Yeah.
Like a comrade, a friend, somebody born in the same country as you, speak the same tongue. Like, it's just...
Yeah, war and everything, it's obviously horrible to begin with, but it's especially difficult when it's directly involving, you know, people from where you are.
Yes.
On the other side.
Yeah. Playing for the other team, so to speak.
It's like, why are we even doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes... Yeah, that's a really good point. It makes you stop and think, like, am I really going to go so far as to kill one of my own? And really, at the end of the day, that's what war is like. I mean...
Yeah, well, and even... It's still, even with the idea of killing one of our own, the world is a global community now. Everyone is our own. Yeah,
and that's... Yeah, we're all human.
Yeah.
I mean, killing your... It used to be killing your own was killing somebody who was white. Then it was killing somebody who was from your country. and now it's everyone is one big
Mm-hmm.
nation, basically.
We all depend on each other. It's kind of an off-topic example, but I saw an article on Coca-Cola
Mm-hmm.
and how it's everyone thinks it's kind of an American product, right?
Yes.
But there's parts of the production and certain ingredients for it come from all over the world.
Yeah, it's about as American as Tim Hortons is. So, yeah.
Yeah, but Coca-Cola, just like a can of Coca-Cola, is a really global product.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a representation for how intertwined our world is.
Yes. But that being said, the USA's not going out of their way to say, we borrowed this from China, we used this from Germany.
Hmm.
Because God forbid if they gave credit to other people. And I'm not pointing out the USA because everybody is like this. Every country is like this.
Yeah. Well,
But-
yeah, it's a balance of respecting the global community and taking pride in your country's accomplishments.
Yes.
The patriotism.
Yeah. And patriotism doesn't mean extremist.
No.
Like I think some people, I think it's a fine line for some.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit on the border. I mean, ISIS obviously can't look inside their minds or know what they're feeling, but in some way, I think an extremist group or a terrorist group is a sign of patriotism gone awry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, when you think about it, it's...
The basic idea gone too far, like you say.
Yeah. Like, why do most people start wars? They want to protect what they have.
Mm-hmm. Or take what someone else has.
Yes. But, yeah, it's obviously a touchy subject, and like I said, we're not biased against the United States. We just use them as an example because they're huge, right? They have everything that pretty much every other country wants, so...
Yeah. And, there's a lot of things we hear about, things that the United States might be doing wrong or things that are going wrong in their country. And that video of singing the Canadian anthem at an American hockey game is a nice reminder to the fact that we're not enemies. Farthest thing from it.
No.
We're the closest friends in the world. Really.
Yeah. Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. We're not even acquaintances. We are friends. We're there for each other. That's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And the USA, like you were mentioning, been there for us, but...
We've been there for them.
Yeah, and that's the way it works. It's a give and take. It's not... There's nobody that's a parasite.
No.
As far as I can tell, but... I mean, it's easy for people to judge how others should do things because, like we talked about, people are biased and they have their own opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Whether people want to admit it or not, everybody is opinionated to some extent.
Yeah, and it's hard to be completely impartial about anything.
Yeah, and you can't agree with everything that goes on.
No.
It's not possible. Even if Stephen Harper, and for those of you in the States, I would hope you know that's our Prime Minister, but if you don't, that's who he is. Or if you're Barack Obama, it doesn't matter, or Putin, it doesn't matter. I saw an article the other day, we live in the most peaceful era in world history of war ever.
Yeah.
And I mean, that shows that we are making advances.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the goal. You don't want to stay where you were in World War I or II.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Persian War, if you want to go back that far. You want to make advances.
And it gives hope to someday that there wouldn't be any war.
Yes.
And a lot of people think, that's impossible, that's never going to happen, just look at history, but I prefer to think that if we keep resigning ourselves to the fact that there's always going to be war, we're never going to accomplish a war-free world.
Yeah.
We have to be optimistic.
And I mean, it's a process, and we are making gains.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, and it's kind of a small analogy to use, a minimal analogy to use, but it's like somebody who goes and works out at the gym. You are not going to lose 50 pounds in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. It takes time.
It takes time. Just like
maybe if you
just like war,
really
just like
hard.
Yeah.
No.
Well, no, even then.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, it's not. Everything is a process, and everything takes time.
Yeah, and I mean, the old quote is you can't rush perfection. And I mean, if you try to rush something like ending war or getting out of a recession, it's like the guy who's running too fast and trips.
Yeah.
You're gonna trip and you're gonna you're going to go one step forward, two steps back.
You become oblivious to the things that are going to pull you down.
Yes. And you lose sight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happened in world history. I think leaders lost sight of what they were fighting for, and that's how wars started. And
Yeah.
but there's different interpretations of how war starts. But
There is. Oh, well, we know there's different reasons, obviously, but yeah, a lot of it comes down to basically respect. Respecting other people's opinion, even if you completely disagree, you have to listen to their opinion. You have to allow them to speak their mind, and you have to actually listen and comprehend what they're saying and try to understand.
Yeah, and we're not obsessed with war, but we use that topic because it's one that everybody can relate to. Because every country is at war, always, it seems. And yeah, that's a good point. Like, I feel that people usually have their ears closed, if that makes any sense. Like, they're not really listening to what the opinions of others are.
Yeah, well, they'll listen, but they won't. They'll
Process.
hear. They'll hear, but they won't listen.
Yeah. Yes, good point. And when that happens, I think people feel ignored, and the point never gets across. That was one of the things we were talking about last week with public speaking. And I feel that you cannot truly be heard unless you're just talking by yourself. Because then people have to listen to you.
Yeah.
Not like it's a chore, but they have to. They have no other escape. They have to listen to your words, whether they like it or not. And
yeah, because considering people's opinion isn't just listening to them and then saying your opinion again. You have to evaluate and think, okay, well, maybe they are right about that, and I should change what I think.
Yeah, and that's why, and I never thought about it before until a couple weeks ago, or the last episode, but when the Prime Minister or the President in the campaign makes their final speech, which is basically the final decisive blow to say, vote for me to become your leader. And I think that's why it's such a big deal, and that's really the turning point for voters, because then you really know what the president's thinking when it's just them in front of 1,000, a million people.
How many voters actually pay attention to campaign stuff ahead of that time?
Yeah. I personally don't.
No. I mean, we don't vote yet.
Yeah. But if we did, I know I wouldn't have paid attention to the previous stuff.
We're pretty busy, and, we care about how our country's run and everything, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will definitely be making more of a point to pay attention to things once I do start voting, once I'm old enough to.
Yeah, I mean, that's only a year away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's not, it's not that far away, and we got to start voting.
One of 36 million people with the responsibility.
Yeah. But what if, and I mean, it seems minimal, but if you're that one vote... Yeah. And obviously, it would never come down to one vote.
Well, a lot of things have in the past.
Okay.
I think we mentioned last episode it was Hitler that got into the Nationalist Party of Germany by one vote.
And that's what I mean. And what if one extra 18-year-old at that time or whatever, I don't know what the voting's like there, voted for someone else. And Hitler didn't come into power and changed all of history.
Yeah, how different would the world be?
Yeah. So voting's important. So kids, go vote.
Well, not kids. Once you're of age, go and vote.
No, go vote. Just show up and vote.
But it is important to take on the responsibility because it's a right in the modern world to be able to vote. We take it for granted because it's been like that in our countries all the way along. But it's an important thing in the world to have that freedom to decide how your government is composed.
Yeah, democracy is huge. And without democracy, most of the people... Well, there's not many people alive that experienced World War I as of today.
No.
There's few. As for World War II, there is quite a lot still around. But other than those people, which are the minority, the majority of us don't or can't grasp what fascism is. Or what...
We haven't experienced it.
Totalitarianism is.
At least not us.
What a dictatorship is. I mean, we were born 17 years ago, And we will never know what a dictatorship felt like, what it felt like to not be able to make your own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
For someone else, for a group of people to make a decision for you.
And I'm grateful for that.
Yes. And it's something that we should be grateful for, and something that we take for granted all too often.
I don't care to ever have that experience.
No. Well, no, obviously, but those who grow up with it,
yeah.
I mean, imagine how they feel.
That's why it's important to pay attention to, even if you don't have an interest in politics or anything, and we're musicians, artists, it's not our focus. We personally take a little bit of interest in history and political science, but it's important to understand how things work, because when you vote, you are part of the deciding factor in what the future of your nation is.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know much about, like, we have a joke here in Canada that through the first 7 or 8 years of schooling, we learn more about the states than we do of our own history. And it's true.
Well, we did spend a lot of time on some American history because, like we said, Canada and the U.S. are intertwined, even back before the countries were formed.
But I mean, just last year in grade 11, I learned so much more about Canadian history.
Oh, yeah.
And the presence that we had over all the other countries, how we became independent, how we weren't just a colony of Britain.
Yeah. And Canada has some dark points in its history, but I think it's quite amazing how our country was formed not out of rebellion or war, but out of peaceful treaty, basically.
Yes, out of politics. Politics done right.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Prime Minister Borden if you can hear this. I'm pretty sure he can't, but you know.
And Laurier and John A. Macdonald and all of them.
Yeah, you know.
And Queen Victoria at the time as well.
The first?
I think so.
Yes. Yeah, shout out to good old Queenie. But oh, Queenie.
I don't think they're gonna hear us back in 1967.
No,
not 1867. What am I saying?
On that note, I think it's important that we study history, because history is a good way to look back, and we were talking about most peaceful era we live in ever right now. And I mean, when you look back on war in history, it's all failure. It's a failure that you learn from, and it's like life. You learn from your failures, you pick yourself back up. It's when you don't pick yourself back up that you've failed, when you've given up.
So to bring it to our discussion topic for this week, to the whole pride in nations kind of thing, we know most of our viewers and listeners are in Canada, but there's probably some outside of Canada, so we'd like to know where you're from and hear a bit of pride for your nation. Yeah,
patriotism and what you think of your nation.
We're also curious just to find out, where our listeners are.
Yeah, I'm quite anxious, because if we have any from Europe, that'd be pretty awesome too.
Yeah, so show your pride if you're Canadian, definitely, but especially if you're outside of Canada, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from the original Jonathan Quick, not John Quick 32,
who is our friend Tyler at school.
No offense to Tyler. I mean, we love hearing from Tyler.
Shout out to Tyler as well.
Yeah, shout out to Tyler.
I don't think the real John Quick's listening.
No, but if he was, that'd be great.
It would.
Yeah.
So John Quick, if you're out there,
please listen.
Send us something.
Don't make me get on my knees and beg. 'Cause that's embarrassing.
Oh, man. One last little thing before we close this episode. I'd like to mention this is episode 8, so we're coming up on 10 episodes. And for episode 10, in a couple weeks, we're planning on doing a 1-hour special episode with a couple guests. We'll reveal who those guests are. We haven't fully sorted it out yet, but that's exciting.
It's for you guys to wonder and for us to tell you, or you could just watch episode 10 and maybe we won't tell you at all.
Yeah.
I guess that's it for today. I'm Colin.
I'm Griffin.
And this has been GC Antics episode 8.